Automation in catheter manufacturing.
Hello, I'm Bryan Mathias, Business Development Manager with SYNEO, based out of West Palm Beach, Florida, and Angleton, Texas. And I'm joined today by Dmitrij Velikan, who's also Business Development Manager or Director of Business Development for Machine Solutions, MSI Vonte. Both of us cover the area of Europe, and today we're going to talk about automation in catheter manufacturing. Typically, a lot of manufacturing sites, such as automotive, have a high level of automation. We don't see a lot of this in catheter manufacturing. It's not commonplace. Why do you think that is, Dmitrij?
Yeah, so I would agree with you, Brian. I mean, mostly automotive sector is quite well automated, which is not the case in medical. So medical device market is quite manual, yet due to very tight tolerances and challenges we are going to discuss within the next few minutes. But right now, that particular market hasn't really seen a lot of automation levels so far yet.
Okay. But we do see a difference between automated machines and automation. So an automated machine would be something such as the Vonte tipping machine, where we have an automated process and controls which you can talk to. And there's a difference between that and automation, which we'd consider sort of a lights out operation, where you walk away from a machine and it runs through the night. So just to explain that difference, where would you see that?
So typically in a catheter manufacturing world and many customers' facilities worldwide, we really see mostly a process automation where some certain particular steps are automated, or let's say it's semi-automated, so where you still have an operator loading and unloading the parts, but let the machine do the rest and let's say form a tip or form a hole. But in terms of parts handling, there is that's sort of still needs to be. I mean, we see automation there at certain level as well, but a few challenges, especially with the size of the extrusion, with the type of the extrusion we are using, with the different coatings, and so on. But in general, the process which exists on the market, they are semi-automated to a very high level. So once you still have to have an operator load and unload the parts into the machine, and maybe automate different stations together, which will transfer the parts from one station to another. But even there, we will face with a lot of challenges around it, which needs to be considered when you design your part and when you design your product. I'm not sure what experience you've done, Brian, with this, but that's what I have seen so far.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we see is commonplace around the industry, catheter manufacturing industry. What is important that an automated process can produce better results than a lot of automation of something that's done by hand. And I think we can all see that at certain steps, such as you mentioned, cutting, drilling, tipping, grinding, forming, they're better with an automated process than something that's done manually. So it is important to automate the process, even though you fully automate the line.
Okay? Right.
And we see some challenges around the automation, and some of them come into ones I'm thinking of are inspection, because a lot of parts need 100% inspection. That sort of takes away the opportunity to automate, because even in an automated process, the part would have to come off and go to a manual inspection station. Other variations, like you mentioned, is the tolerance of incoming parts and product variation in volumes. Is anything else we can think of that sort of prevents automation?
I think you pretty much covered it. I would also say that inspection is a quite hard step, because there are different ways and how the customers would like to inspect their parts. There are different optical systems available, like for that type of inspection, and the level of quality customers would like to see or would like to get through the inspection process might limit the implementation of automation processes for sure. Beside this, I would say we are pretty much covered all that limitations.
Yeah, and then that brings us on perfect to the next point. Is really are catheters designed for automation?
Yes and no. I mean, as you know, there are few type of products which are available on the market which you could easily automate. It depends really on the type of geometry you wanna make. Depend on the level of difficulties you wanna achieve with the final product. I mean, with the shape of with the tip, maybe with the size of the hole you wanna cut. So it's really hard to answer this question. I would say some of the products can be automated to a certain degree. Some of the products really needs to go through the manual or semi-automated stations due to certain challenges we face with the input material.
Yeah, and that comes back then to the design of the catheter from the start. If it's not designed to be made in an automated fashion, then you're looking into sort of revalidation costs and changing the steps and scaling up to high volume production. And from what I can see, around the world is catheters, when they're made for low volumes, get validated, and at the early stages, they're not made for the scaling up.
That is correct. Yeah.
So how do you think decisions around the specification and tolerances at the design stage can affect the ability to automate? And I think a good example from my side, and I'm sure you can talk about more, is sometimes when a product is designed, a medical device is designed or made and validated, it's then reverse engineered for the specification. So if a hole is made in a part at 1 millimeter, plus or minus 0.1, that becomes the specification. Even though it might not be relevant, that hole could have a size of 1 millimeter plus or minus half a millimeter, which would make it more automationable. Do you see that around your parts of the industry?
Right. So within the tip forming space, we also face with a lot of similar situation. For example, when you design a tip and would like to have a certain transition inside of the lumen to go from some specific ID to desired ID, some customers put a spec there and would like to have a controlled ID transition within their tube, which in most of the medical device applications is not relevant. The national plastic transition during the forming phase is more or less great and will cover all, let's say, 90% of the medical device applications which you see on the market. And if you really put a spec saying that the transition inside of the catheter by forming a tip needs to be controlled, you need to use a certain specific mandrel with a specific shape in order to control that transition. And every time you would use that mandrel, that might prevent the automation a little bit, because that you need to maybe feed this part over the specific mandrel to a specific portion. You need to have that position from the back to a specific lens. All this adds additional automation and complexity later on in the automation machine, which just prevents overall automation. If you would just allow natural transition for many tubes, this would be more easier. It will allow for more easier parts handling into their system and also easier handover to the next station.
Yeah, I think what you're saying there is an automated process could give you a better result than the actual original specification, right? If you had something like a bond would give you a more consistent, although it would be closer to the top end maybe of the specification, it would be more consistent and more repeatable.
Right. Yeah. Right. And it's also depend what product. I mean, if we're talking about bonds, there are also there is something which also needs to be considered when you design some butt weld joints and might actually define your specification more more loosen in order to accommodate in order to automate it maybe in a better way. But overall, things can be, when you design a product, the engineer needs to consider how they want to make this part in general. Even on a semi-automated station, there are a lot of things which needs to be considered, starting from the material going to the final shape, even to do it on a semi-automated station. And later on, if you would think one step forward, you also need to take into consideration maybe an additional automation process which can come after you implemented your semi-automated line. So there will be an additional topics like you just mentioned, maybe that whole spec, or maybe national transition specs, which might be more might be not so defined, so strict, which would allow for easier parts handling, for easier automation, and still make a product which will meet final desired functionality requirements.
Yeah, and that's great. I think we can both identify some disconnects between facilities with R&D and manufacturing, and it's often the case that we become the connection. The outside sales guys coming in become the connection between R&D and manufacturing. So when something's designed, we'll give them the advice at R&D stage to help them become manufacturing.
That's true.
Or make a manufacturable process.
That's true, because we see it also a lot from a manufacturing point of view, and we can already make a connect inside the company, or maybe provide some feedback. What the R&D engineer needs to consider right from the in the design stage before design freeze, in order to easy manufacture this part. So it's sometimes we really establish this connection between R&D and production facilities within the companies, because sometimes we recognize just teams just don't talk to each other, or maybe just don't think on some difficulties they can face during the automation phase, or during semi-automation phase.
Just a different focus, right? The R&D focus is to get a functional part. The manufacturing focus is to get a high volume part out the door, and they don't use the same technology sometimes, or the same budget, or whatever else comes into it.
Right.
And I think by engaging with manufacturing and the machine supplier, we can offer things like prototyping, some testing, development parts that can bridge that gap.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah. So that brings us to the next point, I suppose, is, do we think this will change? Is there any appetite for automation in catheter manufacturing?
Yeah, I would say definitely yes. And within the last 2 years, I have been asked, by many times by a lot of customers on if you guys can automate it. Do you envision we can automate this process? Can you help us? And it's always product and maybe process dependent, and needs to be really reviewed separately. But I see the trend is going there. I see that few customers were trying already to automate it. The wish is really there. I mean, I definitely see the trend is going there, because the most desire, of course, will be to become more productive. And I think that the main driving factor beside the automation, since we have a very high burden in terms of selling costs of the product. So companies are really looking at how to reduce the manufacturing costs, and automation is only the way how to do it, especially considering not such low automated field like a medical device production. So of course the desire is there, just a matter of implementation of it. And I've seen, and we have done together even few automation projects where it just works great, and have just I can recommend the customers really review it step by step. Maybe start with a few simple processes, and then modular add additional stations to the automation line. But yeah, obviously the desire is there. So
yeah, and it's only ever possible to automate a repeatable process, right? And one of the other challenges that come in there is product variations, because you might have a product that will run over a number of French sizes with a number of different identification markers, and even into the stent manufacturing, different lengths, different balloon sizes, different geometries, things like that, which there's such a wide range of products that you'd want a high volume, consistent product to even consider automation.
Right. That's probably the biggest challenge due to this infinite number of French sizes. You just need so many. You would need a different, very big variations of lines in order to accommodate it, and it's a challenge. It's a cost burden, but I mean, there is a way how to do it. I mean, you can always think about maybe multi-line system which will cover different French sizes and have some inline inspection which will sort out those French sizes differently. But in general, yeah, it's for sure it's a big challenge for customers even start looking into this. So I would agree with you. But you know, both of us can help out and with the first steps, and maybe brings few processes together, and then add additional processes on top of this. So but as you said, the first you need to have a repeatable process. If your semi-automated process is repeatable enough, let's say if it's a tip forming or cutting or hole drilling, then you can start thinking about maybe how you wanna feed in the tube in a more automated way, how you wanna sort it out in the beginning, and do the same thing during the after inspection. So
yeah, you're definitely right there. You automating a repeatable process. When you automate a process that's done manually and it's inconsistent, automating it isn't going to make it better. If anything, it's going to make it worse and have a less yield. And we know from experience when we've automated Vontae systems with SYNEO, tip forming, you've got that repeatability and closed loop systems and things like that. And those are the sort of things we need to look at on repeatability and inspection of incoming parts and things like that. So yeah.
Right.
Okay. So that's just about covered everything we wanted to look at. Any other comments or additions?
I think from my side, I would just only maybe add that customers can really be open to automation, or should be open to automation, as that's definitely it's definitely a future trend within this potential market niche. You just need to select wisely the supplier. You just need to select wisely, first of all, bring your semi-automated stations under control with a high level of repeatability, and that's what we can also offer you in terms of tip forming with the built-in closed loop temperature controls, or with the senior cutting and drilling systems, which provide a great level of repeatability. And once you get there, we would support you with any additional steps you can add on top of this and expand this line to a more automated line for your manufacturing facility.
Yeah, totally agree, Dmitrij, and I look forward to working with you on some of these automation projects, hopefully in the near future.
Yeah, same ways.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.